printed in the minutes of the joint sitting. I will now proceed, honorable members, to call on the Chief Whip of the Majority Party to take the podium.
Thank you very much, distinguished guest from the gallery, Manene na Manene Kazi. Fellow South Africans, we are our Secretary for Parliament, Utatika Vatlanza Utet. Fellow South Africans, Ngalentla Zana Ndiabulisa. Good morning, Huye More, Abusheni, Nyalocha, Dumelang Sanbonani Mulweni. Ekameni Lombuto Wesizwe.
I'm sure we'll ask the table to look at the problem, but please proceed, Chief Whip. Yeah, the problem is being attended to.
I've already greeted this August House. Ekameni lombuto olilifa lesizwe ngomhla wethoba kulendlu. Abantu bomzantsi Afrika babeke kwintende yabo ubomi babo kumbutho wesizwe. Uxanduva lokukhokhela isizwe sonke nelizwe liphela. Okukona kungundoqo ukuthi njengombutho wesizwe phansi kwesikhokhelo esiphume izandla sikamongameli into yoba senze inguqu ezikhawulezileyo kwimiba yentendo, also outlined commitments to taking decisive action, address challenges affecting the nation through placing the people's interest in the center of the process of change. I am moved by the memory of the towering icon of our struggle, Udalibunga Utata Umandela, Holshasha, who stood a few meters from here when Kwake Upper Apples Mona, Robben Island. It was a historic event that marked the turning point in the liberation struggle and South Africa's march to freedom and democracy. Sentenced to life imprisonment, his release breathed new life and hope into the nation that for decades echoed the struggle song, "We shall overcome." Today, that confront us. We must remain true to that spirit of resilience, and each of us must do all in our power to work together to fight poverty and reduce inequality and corruption and address the energy crisis. We don't speak about poverty as it is in fashion, but we speak about poverty because it is dead to persevere to greatness through poverty. Thina siyazana ke nendlala nenhlupheko yilonto ke isithundezayo into basisebenzele abantu bakowethu. The ANC has a mandate not to use this podium for cheap politicking, but to communicate the achievements of this government, working together with social partners to implement the commitments made in the previous parties and some media houses have been repeating that this president and the government has not done anything for the past 4 years. They've been making empty promises. We acknowledge that the president or the national government alone cannot solve the myriad of challenges and problems that are affecting our clear display of abuse and of serious debate for political campaigning. Asikhanyeli ukuba imicelimngeni ikhona. I-ANC ngalo lonke ixesha ihlala iba yeyokuqala ukuvuma ukuba zikhona imizekelo yokufuncuka kwezinga lokuphuncuka komqela owenziweyo ngurhulumente. Umzekelo obonakalayo ngulobo kuthethwa ngawo indlela abafundi abasebenze ngayo bekhokhelwa ngootitshala abazinikeleyo abafundisi ntsapho esibabulelayo. The ANC is not in denial of bad road infrastructure. We need investment in new infrastructure projects and funding in maintenance. The national interest is our utmost priority, and the rule of law as a cornerstone of our constitutional democratic state must. The parliament provides oversight as the tribune of the people and is expected to promote the rule of law. Since seen here last Thursday by some parliamentarians heading to confront the President of the Republic of South Africa must be condemned, and the joint rules must take its course. These few parliamentarian nation as South Africans, we know how to process our issues. Kwintetho yesizwe kwiveke ephelileyo umongameli usikhumbuzile sisonke apha okokuba abantu boMzantsi Afrika abanawo amandla nomonde womdudo wamasele umbhodamo zorhulumente. A lot of hot air is going to be blown about the government declaration of a national state of disaster to respond to the intervention, namely the strong central coordination and decisive actions of South Africa, that this government must add load shedding. This government must stabilize energy throughout by intervening. The comprehensive plan to attend to electricity challenges must be implemented, Honorable. Taba yena ya electricity ki khomo ya mushate. Waihama umulatu, wailisha umulatu. Continuation of solar roof panels. Vandalism of infrastructure and stealing of cables is tantamount to sabotage and counter-revolution. Nobumnyama ngoba busibuyisela emva kwezoqoqosho. There's an urgent need that faces the challenges of local government revenue in order to avail resources to meet the needs of the people in the sphere, prioritizing basic and fundamental needs of our people. Also must come on board as they did in the NETLAC framework when the nation responded to COVID-19. When we adopted the Stated Crime and Corruption, the Auditor General worked with government departments and entities to introduce real-time audits, and we want to really appreciate that. The Department of Employment and Link Council and Employees, the Department of Social Development, also able within weeks to roll out a new social grant to help the unemployed, and cushion speaks for itself, but challenges, we do accept that they grow daily. These capabilities were built within a relative short time. They stand as a proof to inspire us and mobilize our energy towards same goals. Robust oversight by the parliamentary committees must be intensified to prevent the misfit in various moments to overcome oppressive system. There is nothing that can not be done now, as we have done with the past laws in 1952. We mobilized volunteers in 1956, and we launched the UDF in 1983. Given all this, we are going to draw our experience to mobilize all South Africans to partner with government to solve living, and we call on our own government to expand the safety net for poor and working class. We also call on the business sector to not to raise prices of gender-based violence and femicide. We congratulate the police, the prosecutors who make sure that violent crimes are put behind violent working together. We pay special tribute and condolences to the artists who died in the line of entertainment. DJ Somebody, Mpinsha, Mabena, and all other heroes and heroines. To government of the people of Turkey and Syria, after a terrible earthquake, we took of more than 37,000 talents of young people in our population on ongoing challenges of youth unemployment in our country. We call on government to play an active leading a role by Revival Eskael Mpahlela, whose centenary we celebrate this year. I quote, "Everybody who is willing to work and has a nation-building vision rather than aspirations for a heed of the President Ramaphosa's wise words in SONA 2023 address that stay the course and intensify our collective effort." Dango.
Thank you very much. For you to know that the matter of the aircon is being attended to, so please be patient. To the next speaker, Honorable the Leader of the Opposition.
Honourable Speaker, Mr. President and fellow South Africans. In January 2019, a select group of business at that dinner, the host stood up and described the term in office of South Africa's former President Jacob Zuma as 9 wasted years. According to one attendee, and I quote, "It made me think about how the country had been run in the last years. We lost some of the gains that President Cyril Ramaphosa talking about the administration of his ANC predecessor." As we look back now on that early period of the irreparable conclusion, that you, Mr. President, are somehow guilty of something even worse than the thing that you once accused Zuma of, disastrous years. If you thought that we lost some gains under Zuma, Marx, history repeats itself, first as tragedy and then as farce. And that is exactly what you have wrought on South Africa, Mr. President. The new dawn was a false dawn. Ramaphosa was a delusion. Your supposed commitment to sweeping economic reform since Mr. Ramaphosa became president. Murder has increased by 20% over the same period, with 70 people killed in our of permanent life under the Ramaphosa era. In fact, when he became president in 2018, since then it has gone up every single year. First to 22 days, then to 35 days, then to 48. It looks like 2023 is going to smash all these despicable records. Already this year, we've had over 1,000 hours of consecutive load shedding and counting to lead the country onto a fundamentally different and better path. Last Thursday, you spoke to a nation that had arrived on the banks for the past 3 decades under the ANC. This is the socialist approach that the party embarked upon in 1997, when they formally adopted it. His party believes that if the state controls the economy, it will be better than the people controlling the economy through open markets. Full control of South Africa's energy production. They believe that the best way to provide affordable rail transport for the nation is to keep full control of National Command Center, for them to decide who must be locked down and who mustn't, who can work and who cannot. And that is why the single day. It's marked by failing public services, by hospitals that cannot treat the sick, by trains that cannot run, and by a police service that cannot approach of centralized state control. This is now the daily reality of life in South Africa. Yet, as we see a different and better future, but to get there, to turn our backs on decades of failed anti-policies, we first had to cross that ground. On Thursday, a courageous leader who really cared about this nation would have had the head and the heart to admit that his party is wrong. People. Now, make no mistake about it, South Africa was ready to cross, has put them through. On last Thursday, we looked to you, sir, our president. We asked you to show us the way across the river, resourcefulness and creativity of the South African people, to put us on the road to socio-economic freedom that all of the world's prosperous nations have traveled. Because we don't want meager social grants. We want to rely on our own jobs and businesses. We don't want to rely on your cadres at stake. President Cyril Ramaphosa, the nation pleaded for him to do the right thing and to take us onto this hopeful new path on the other side of the great Rubicon River. All he could do was stare, terrified at the challenge. Instead of leading us across the Rubicon at the SONA of this year, policies and the ANC approach of state control that has landed us in this terrible mess. too weak, too indecisive, and too cowardly to take on the back on the Rubicon. He turned his back on us, and he turned his back on the only pathway that can save this country. Instead of getting the powers during the COVID crisis last year, instead of deregulating and unleashing private sector electricity generation, he has centralized even more power in his new state-owned enterprise to provide fresh looting opportunities for the cadres. Instead of removing incompetent ministers of energy and public enterprises, mark this, by once again expanding and rather than shrinking the role of the state, the president has all guaranteed that it will get worse. But a curious thing also happened last Thursday after the SONA. Mr. Ramaphosa clearly believed that people would just oblige and follow him back down the road to decay and decline. He has gravely miscalculated. Promise of prosperity and hope on the opposite shore. The response to President Ramaphosa's SONA makes it clear that he has placed the party political interests of his own dying Rubicon. He has lost the support of the country. And last Thursday will forever be remembered as the day that history overtook President. To the cries of the people and doubling down on the failed ideologies that caused the suffering, the government has deserted us. But that does not mean Dawn was a cruel mirage. And yes, Palapala showed us who he really is. And yes, we too wonder, as he said, why he is still doing the job. Ramaphosa has failed. But you know what? Thanks to our democracy, we are never wholly dependent on one person. The president has failed to lead us. We have to build a bridge across those raging waters ourselves at the next national elections. Like hope and resilience. Wrong, Mr. President. We are a nation that should be defined by our commitment to a constitutional democracy platitudes. And it's precisely for moments like this when the leader fails this nation that we have a democracy. We want to get this country onto a better path before. And let there be no doubt, there is only one party that offers our country a realistic way across the Rubicon and onto a better path. In Gauteng, Umgeni in KwaZulu-Natal rips apart the very fabric of the state. There's only one party. Power cuts get worse by the day. There is only one party working day and night in the province and the city to shield people from electricity directly from the open market, and with hundreds of megawatts of power still to come. That party. And so today, I stand before the people of our country not to offer you more idealistic dreams, bullet trains, smart pragmatism, for that is what the DA offers our country. A credible, pragmatic, realistic set of solutions that will get our country. Offers more of the same by assigning more power over our lives to the incapable state. The DA offers to give power back to the people where it belongs. And economic decisions are decentralized into the hands of the people where it belongs. Accountability, non-racialism as partners with zero tolerance for corruption. It is these timeless principles that have helped the country. And by voting DA in 2024, we can bring this to bear. Because anybody who seriously wants to cross that Rubicon must understand the binary. We're on 27% and we are closing that gap. Support for them has crashed. And no matter how, or it'll be a DA-led coalition. We will either have a yellow coalition trapped on the wrong side of that riverbank, the better and brighter future. Honourable Speaker, the people of South Africa know what needs to be done to fix the country. They are ready to embrace policies that only empower the connected elite, with non-racial policies that are targeted towards lifting poor people out of poverty and into opportunity. We're just going to have to do it without President Ramaphosa. By uniting behind the DA next year, we can cross that Rubicon. We can leave behind the shedding and corruption are a thing of the past, where quality education and healthcare are available to all, where millions of people can move out of poverty and into opportunity. They are the past. The challenges we face are large, and yes, tough battles like working citizens who are desperate for change. In the face of growing hardship inflicted by the government, these are the people who still get up every day. Together we can build a land of prosperity and opportunity. But we're going to need a government that's working for us, not against us. And the only way we can get there, President Ramaphosa couldn't, and cross that Rubicon. Thank you.
We now proceed to the Minister.
President of the Republic, His Excellency Matamela Ramaphosa, Deputy President David Mabuza, colleagues in the South Africa. I guess the biggest challenge we are going to be confronted with, like one would have tried to say, facts and ideas. Where we are sitting, DA believes that ANC is obsessed. It's only when you ignore facts to be able to think along that path. Already, as we work in program, diversifies the various sources of energy. The fact that we have lifted the ceiling for private sector to generate capacity. Speak now, we are ensuring that there is a move to secure energy on emergency basis. The leadership of this president, acceleration of procurement of energy from renewables, from battery storage, using the battery storage to energy. Now, two, again to deal with facts. For anyone to believe what DA says, you must have not been. The intention of that program already on the move is to ensure that there's water availability. And also the president said here, we have days so that private sector that applies for water license is able to access that license. Again, for you, our program is clear with regard to interventions to unlock and deal with regulated. It's a small, medium enterprise. These are small, medium enterprise. This is private sector. Those working together with the Department of Small Business is unlocking the path for small business to participate. That cannot be. Again, an ANC government is a transformative government. If you want to say you've consciously said nothing about the state of Johannesburg, you've consciously said nothing about the unauthorized expenditure. That is a DA mayor. Again, with this metro, which has passed the test of racial exclusion. All black townships here, you go to Philippi, you go to Guguletu, I have been in those townships, Honorable Stacey. The police stations, the point that I'm making to you is that of racial exclusion. And Joburg was run by the African National Congress. Look at the financial, look at running Joburg. You can go to Tshwane, when Tshwane was run by Sputla Ramaphosa. You look at, it's because you deny facts, right? Fortunately, very clear about facts. They know that DA future is based on a racially exclusive South Africa. That in dealing with ESCON, as we sit here, there's a focus on 6 powered stations, on 6 stations, which have been found to be the main contributors to the load shedding, are attended to. As we speak, to release resources to improve on maintenance and ensure that transmission lines, those are facts. So look at the facts. Where there's a survey about respect and trust of leaders, you don't feature in the same space with our president. And this year's State of the Nation address by the president, and to rather devastating period, which was ushered in COVID-19, by COVID-19 catastrophic floods, serious case of it, as the president indicated. We have seen the resilience of South Africans and are constantly inspired by our belief. Both figures of third quarter 2022, economy grew 2 quarters last year. Economy grew no less than 2 times 1,000. Those are facts. The declaration and contributing immensely in the rebuilding process. What are we doing here? As we deal with 6 to intervene to make sure that we are at a pace and actually are able to prevail over the damage that load shedding is causing. At the same penultimate year, in 2024, we'll go back to South Africans to seek a renewed mandate based on facts, and that is based on facts, because we are a government that leaves no one behind. No one behind. We leave no Philippi behind. We have placed public accountability at the center of building an ethical and a capable developmental state as set out in the engine. That is the river you cannot cross with us. The river that this president is leading us to cross is the river where frauds of the key institutions. Arrests have been demonstrated. Kingpins have appeared before court. As we speak now, money into tax administration and governance at South African Revenue Service in this country. I know, Honorable States, you cannot speak as you must ignore those facts. Last year, SARS broke revenue collection into Public Investment Corporation, highlighted widespread abuses and governance failures at the PIC, and ongoing review began preparing for trial cases emanating from the Commission of Inquiry into state capture, and last year several arrests were made. The ITS President tabled his response to the State Capture Commission in October. The President continues to work closely with the special investigations are bearing fruit, with some of the looted money being returned by multinationals and others. SI investigations to COVID-19 procurement, counting officers for disciplinary actions. 63 officials have been found guilty. 476 referrals have been made. We will cross the river based on facts under the leadership of the ANC.
Lima, but honorable members, please note the following. Please note the following. He will take from Honorable Mentor's time, which is 12 minutes, and the table will keep us informed.
Take this opportunity to acknowledge the leadership of the EFF and present here the
point of order.
Speaker, on a point of order, I'm rising to find out what is Honorable Malema.
Unfortunately, Honorable Member, that's not the point of order. Please proceed, Honorable Malema.
have not. The officials, commissars from the CCT, PCT, RCT, and BCT members, the ground forces of the uncompromised lead the people of South Africa. We also acknowledge the leadership of the opposition parties present here in Parliament. Under normal circumstances, particularly after the revelations of crimes in Palapala, we can boldly state that the South Africa does not have head of state and Republic of South Africa. South Africa's constitution obliges anyone who is elected as a president to uphold, respect, and defend the constitution. The misconduct of the Speaker on the 9th of February 2023 has also disqualified and violated the Constitution and the rules of the National Assembly when she allowed the police to invade Parliament and made it worse by calling on the security forces of SARS to protest against the sole director of Ntaba Nyoni Estate Pty Ltd. The company that owns Palapala Farm in Limpopo. We have already submitted a motion of no confidence against Mrs. Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula, and we officially withdraw our honor. We does not respect the laws of this country and can do everything to security forces. The Constitutional Court has ruled that the police or that members of parliament execute their responsibility without any fear or intimidation. But once you usher in police and even possibly prosecute those who disagree with the tyrant, the police must never be allowed inside the chamber, because that is where the security forces to intimidate those who are holding them accountable. I've known the president of the ANC longer than many of you. His life is under threat because Julius is next to him. I've been next to him before many of you joined the ANC, including the second Deputy Secretary General of the ANC, who sit with him in the chamber, and he does so without even having bodyguards, without being intimidated. The president himself said, when he was playing golf the following, you saying, the people who use your own stomachs to think. The president has put you under the bus, those who said the president was under threat, because the speaker has lost total control of this parliament, and that's why she must step down. We take this opportunity in our lifetime. The organization that you started 10 years ago, it's a force to be reckoned with and a fighting instrument in the hands of the people. Despite the fact that you, as ground force, as we are talking here today, we are a government in the city of Johannesburg, where the EFF was founded. And the EFF is responsible for public safety, and South Africa will go down. And our communities will receive better primary health care, which will be premised on massive public education on health care and health matters. Public murder, robberies, car hijackings, assault with intention to do grievous bodily harm in all crime spots of Johannesburg, particularly Hillbrow, GP, Central Johannesburg. Our energy services must understand
Honorable Malema, just a minute. I see your hand is up, Honorable Member. Can I?
Chair, I'm rising on 14P. The Honorable Member on the podium have taken. No, you can howl. We've been schooled by that one. Listen, we've been schooled by that one. He told us that the president, even standing to address this house, he is a delinquent, he disrupts the house, therefore he must also not be allowed to address the house. Chair. Thank you very much.
Please proceed, Honorable Malema.
There is a difference between addressing and debating. Very thin line. I'm not addressing, I'm debating. The organ.
Sit for a minute. Honorable Member, please start off by indicating on what point of order are you rising. On what point are you rising? On what point?
Chair, I'm raising Malema. Offensive language is the last end. Or he must not address, because we can't be.
Honorable members, can I really make a plea? And I'm not going to really allow any other person to desist from doing so. Honorable Malema.
Thank you very much. Healthcare and accessibility of clinics for 24 hours. Each and every ward in the city of Johannesburg must have healthcare facility, whether it is a hospital, clinic, poly, or to come to them only when they are terminally ill and require expensive and sophisticated healthcare operations. Primary healthcare means that the Department of Health must prepare confronting our communities. Our health department will work with schools, community forums, and community-based organizations to publicly educate our people on preventative healthcare measures are filled so that we can give our people a proper service. The EFF remains the only dependable and reliable weapon for the total liberation of the working class. 10 years existence of the EFF and preparing for a journey ahead. We take this opportunity to say to the people of South Africa, what you are listening to is not a realistically at the center of South Africa's crisis, is a full-time businessman, animals trader, possibly a puppet of both the domestic and global capitalist interest, who has said that the promises of universal access to early childhood development, millions of particularly black children in villages and townships have no access to early childhood development. What this means education before even 2 years old, while black children are only given access to education at the age of 5 and 6. And even when they go to school, exactly 29 years since the first inclusive elections, yet we still have primary and secondary schools that use pit toilets, and we still have schools without electricity, without water. It's for extremely expensive private schools, which majority of our people cannot afford and cannot reach. In the year 2022, almost 1 million students wrote their senior technology and universities because no one amongst those who are in government planned for the future of these students. In actual fact, there's been more than 4 million applications into institutions of higher education in 2019. There's still no free decolonized education in South Africa. Academically deserving yet poor students are being turned away from institutions of higher learning. Donsela was killed at the Durban University of Technology. There is still a shortage of more than 500,000 beds for students at TVET colleges, University of Technology and universities by different people. The South African government has neglected its obligation to create a safe and conducive teaching and learning environment for students, those who sacrifice employment in South Africa. More than 12 million capable South Africans who are looking for jobs, including those who are discouraged, cannot find jobs anywhere because there is no. South African Post Office has announced that it will be worsening. The fact is that South Africa currently has close to 20 million people who are dependent on social grant. There is absolutely no child and definitely no adult who can survive and thrive with 350 or 450 per month, whereas in a country with rising costs of living. Not aided by government since 1994 has not been impactful in reducing poverty because the current government is incapable of creating jobs, and the effort to resolve the land question was undermined by the puppets of neocolonialism and imperialism. We are here today with still working under a constitution is stolen land, and no amount of lies will hide the fact that settlers are in possession of stolen goods. In the middle of joblessness, and many crises, the minister who has always shown up after the crimes and only posed for cameras. This leader has demonstrated fight full without any alternative to reducing crime in South Africa. We said before that the current leadership of the police is incapable, and we are firmly.
See the point of order, listen to the point of order.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. ON. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Malema.
He didn't quote the rule. He didn't quote the rule, Chair.
No, never mind the quoting.
I can't hear you, Chair. Switch on. They wrote for you. Switch on.
Honorable Malema. Now, Honorable Malema, I'm calling upon you to withdraw the use of an offensive word, and that word is
to release the clever minister who has always shown up for cameras all the time there is a crime scene with an intention of arresting wrong people in South Africa in all respect. We don't even want to talk about GBV. We don't want to talk about cash in transit haste. We don't want to talk about contact crime, because dealing with crime, it's only when the leadership of the police is working with criminals. The leadership of the police works with drug lords. The leadership of the police works with the chief of the police, actually planned the assassination of our deputy president, a matter that we brought to the attention of the president, that the minister
Honorable
has been
Malema,
confirmed.
Honorable Malema, please take your seat. Honorable Khatebe, on what point are you rising?
Chairperson, thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Yes.
No, Rule 12 is very clear. Rule 12, Chair, is very clear. That the rules of the NA, Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Malema, I'm sure by now you know that if you are to make put in front of the House so that the matter can be...
I withdraw, Chair.
Thank you very much.
When and said to the suspect, put the name of Floyd Shivambu, that you worked with Floyd Shivambu to assassinate.
Honorable Malema, just a minute.
On a point of privilege. House Chair, I want to address you and ask you a question on privilege. And the question is that there may not continue in the same debate. Now the SONA has resuming, has not adjourned.
Rules Committee and in other related parliamentary structures. Thank you very much. Please, Honorable Malema, please proceed.
Thank you very much. The Deputy President of the EFF has been targeted by the leadership of the police, which was willing to connive with suspects and persuaded the suspects to put the name of the Deputy President of the EFF in the murder of the so-called president, to remove Honorable Bekele with immediate effect, because he has failed the people of South Africa. What happened to our third artist, DJ Somebody, AKA, will never get to know, because the police and higher echelons of the police are in cahoots with the criminal syndicate. We cannot fight crime well led by criminals. We must first get rid of criminals in order to difficult for him to live long.
Honorable Malema, don't you really think that it should be order members, order honorable members, order honorable members. Now, Honorable Malema, don't you think it would be advisable what the rules of Parliament provide for? In other words, that you come here with a motion and the motion gets debated, so that indeed all the issues that you are related get considered and engaged by members of Parliament.
Chair, I'm debating. When we stand up during the president's speech, we are told you raise that point in debate. When we raise the point in debate, something else is being said. You ought to fight criminality in the police, and if the shoe fit, wear it, because it's the truth. Now you have established Minister of Electricity. We hope to see Minister of Trains. We hope to see Minister of Flights. We hope to see Minister of Dinan. We hope to see Minister of Potholes. We hope to see Minister of GBV. Because the reality is that, Mr. President, nothing is when to be on top and do nothing. The reality of the situation is that you went against the advice we gave you when you started as a president, that listen to your own organization. Your own organization has now said, put the ESCOM under energy. What did you do? You went to a separate kitchen cabinet and created a Ministry of Electricity, which Stellenbosch, and that dictates the direction this country must take. If that is a Minister of Public Enterprise, and if we need a separate minister, it means that minister has failed. Why are you so scared to remove an incompetent minister who has failed and collapsed everything in the state-owned, my brother, there is nothing I can do anymore. I need someone capable to come and rescue Dinel, to come and rescue Transnet, to come and rescue SAA, because Eskom and the rest have collapsed under Honorable Pravin Gordhan. I don't know Lemusabani or Honorable Pravin Gordhan. I don't know if he's got a list of impimpis or sellouts of during apartheid, the way you are so scared of him, them again. Fellow South Africans, nothing is working in this country. You were promised all manner of things. When President Zuma was removed, things are worse. Things will get worse because the president said that this electricity crisis is not going to be resolved in the nearest future, at least for 2 years. When he says 2 years, he means 5 years, or even more than that. It is of March, we remove this puppet government from power. We must make sure that on the 20th of March, we demand the resignation of Mr. Ramaphosa. We must make sure that on the 20th of March, we demand the stopping of crime. We demand that the money launderer must be removed from office. We demand that crime in South Africa must be something of the past. If you want employment and you are sitting at home in darkness without a hope to a standstill, only cowards who are in the pockets of capital will be scared to come to the streets on the 20th of March. We tried here in Parliament. They used their majority to defend criminality. We tried in the court. They used the judiciary to defend their criminality. We look forward to seeing you on the 20th of March, 2023. Only the fearless will be on the streets and holding this puppet government accountable. We are not scared. Only Amagwala will go and beg the president that he must not resign. But because the president had already resigned, and once you have resigned and you are convinced by affection to stay, you must know that it is only the body that remains there. The conscience is gone, because the conscience is the one that wrote a letter. No amount of factionalism can bring back that conscience. I don't know what the deputy president, the former deputy president, is doing here. He allows them to use him. They want you and former deputy president Didi Mabuza, please join the streets on the 20th of March in Mpumalanga. All of us, please, let's go on the streets on the 20th of March. Patria muerte! Patria muerte! Patria muerte! Thank you very much.
Honourable members, when asked, we know that when asked to take the seat, Honourable Malema just ignored the presiding officer. We note that. We note it because we may have to follow it up. Thank you very much, Honourable Gwede Mandash. Honourable Floyd. On what point are you raising?
I'm also on the point of order. The point of order that I'm raising on is that the tradition and practice of this parliament is that as a presiding officer, when the speaker is on the platform, you only intervene when your attention is brought to violation of the rules. On several occasions, when the commander-in-chief, not even violation of any rule, because there's nothing wrong with speaking about the criminals in the police service. And he never mentioned anyone by name. Those who know, they know who that person is. But he kept on interrupting him when he was giving direction as to what must happen moving forward. That is unacceptable of you as the presiding officer today. And you must consider shifting there if you are incapable of handling this house appropriately, because what they're doing is unacceptable and will never allow that to continue.
And honorable members, I think we should, all of us should ensure that the business of the house is properly run. And that indeed, as presiding officers, we have the overall responsibility of being fair and undermined. If we are to succeed in ensuring proper decorum of the House and the dignity of the House, all of us must take responsibility. All of us must behave and work in a way that seeks to build and ensure that we do what we are supposed.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the National Council of Provinces, Honorable Amos Masondo, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Nosvuwe Mapisa Ngakula, Deputy Speaker Lichisa Tsinodi, Deputy Chairperson of the NCOP Sylvia Lucas, His Excellency the President Debede Mabuza, Honorable Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members present here, invited guests to this gathering today. In the State of the Nation address, President Cyril Ramaphosa identified load shedding is solvable, and he made no obstacles or limitation in addressing it. Secondly, he announced that he will appoint a Minister of Electricity in his office. It is actually an approach that can be defined as project management approach in dealing with the crisis. Some people in the I think something called school will help them understand project management as not being reductionist. All it is emphasizing urgency of execution. Project management approach, you mean there will be clear time frame, the beginning and the end of the project, and there will be clear milestones, and there will be a clear critical path that you should not deviate from. Now, therefore, this is not reductionist. It is 24 months to resolve load shedding. That is how serious the president takes this crisis. And unfortunately, we have political parties that never want to be involved in finding solutions of any crisis. They believe that opposition means just opposing anything that is tabled by the ANC and its government. That is a mistake. Parties in parliament should contribute to finding solutions to made a bold statement that will support declaration of the state of disaster on the emergency and the energy crisis. That was the 31st of January. Then when the state of disaster was declared on the 9th of February, the same leader of the Democratic Alliance came back and said, we'll take the government to court for declaring a state of disaster. Now, when you have the main opposition party talking, now this means talking from both sides of the mouth, Honorable Steenhuisen, is not helpful to society. The DA must throw ideas. We use those ideas to get solutions. I don't want to refer to the FF and ATM, Honorable Malema, because you opted out of the State of the Nation address, went left, and you are not here. Something very, very unthinkable. In a country where a prime minister was assassinated in the House of Parliament, they stormed the stage. It's unthinkable. No, but I'm leaving this to the president to finalize. I'm leaving the criminal aspect to the Minister of Police to connect. I refer to a crisis. This includes improving ESCOM's energy availability factor through maintenance and servicing existing power stations. That means the current coal power station must operate optimally. We procure emergency power. we purchase electricity from neighboring countries, and we improve skills capacity of ESCOM. And those four interventions will help us.
Just a minute. Honorable Josie, on what point are you
A
standing?
point of order.
Yes, okay, let's hear it.
Honorable Mantashe says his prime minister was assassinated. And I know only of one prime minister, that's Verwoerd. Are you saying Verwoerd was your minister?
No, I didn't say that.
I've been very suspicious that you were part of apartheid. Wena. Apartheid.
Honorable Josie.
You just confirmed calling Verwoerd your prime minister.
Honorable Nick, a plea once again. Please do not abuse the point of order and give us speeches and so on. Please don't do that. Proceed, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. So our main focus on improving electricity availability factor 3%, Kendall 45.5%, Dover 42.8. Those 6 power stations deprive the country of more than 50% of availability factor. And therefore, this focus minister will have to focus on those power stations to give us energy and resolve load shedding. The government could have sustainable energy security of supply. And that's why, for example, we must be reminded that 2,200 and 500 megawatts of renewable energy was procured under bid window 4, on which we were 2,120 and 30 megawatts are connected to the grid, providing us with much needed electricity. 2,559 megawatts are under construction. Under bid window 6, we procured 4,200 megawatts. Only 1,000 could be declared because of the grid problem. So as we deal with the problem of the current coal generators, we must equally urgently deal with who is appointed to focus on electricity, which is not something strange, by the way. Egypt has a Minister of Electricity. Bahrain has, Kuwait has, New Zealand had for a long period of time. It has stopped that now. And so it's not something new. Let's focus on providing electricity in the country. Let me explain that as a department, Mineral Resources and Energy, on gas, and we're going to issue bid window 7, which is going to go up to 5,000 megawatts. Let me leave energy and use the remaining 5 minutes on mining. South African mining sector contributes 8% to the gross domestic product, and we're aiming it to contribute 12%. This low performance is largely attributed to global increase of energy prices because of the bottlenecks on our rail and ports and crime. Now, as a result, mineral production contracted by 9% in 2022. And that contraction was actually backed as a trend by one company called Goldfields, because much earlier it applied to establish its own solar plant to substitute mines, that if you take the initiative, you will save the economy. And again, I think it is quite important that NERSA has approved registration of 406 megawatts, and the total of this registered generation is 1,664 megawatts. Among the generators is Cyril, which is a mining company, which will begin the construction, will construct 70 megawatts, 70, of solar plant. And that is a trend that mining companies are following to mitigate the crisis of load shedding. We welcome the establishment of a joint structure between Transnet and the Mineral Council South Africa to accelerate improvement of our rail and port infrastructure, because those bottlenecks deprive South Africa of taking advantage of good, and therefore it is important for us to attend to these problems. And I must say, there was a lot of interest shown by investors in the exploration in 2023 mining in Daba. And if we pay and invest enough in exploration, mining has a future. That's where it all begins. And we'll work in this industry so that these investments are realized. Furthermore, of rare earth minerals in the Northern Cape, copper, nickel, and many others. And these minerals, which our country is endowed with, are essential for the development of low carbon economy that we're looking forward to. This by 42% over the last 18 months. The February this year, end of this month, it will be out and we'll be having it sooner. Let me conclude by expressing our appreciation following 2022 registered the lowest number of fatalities in the mining industry in history. 49 is the number. Now, in a country that has been full of disasters, you can look into the Colebrook disaster, 435 workers die in one day. Your Kinross disaster, 177 miners die. Your Vaal Reef disaster, your Sendelina disaster. When you reduce fatality in the mining industry to 49, it's a progress towards that in 2019 of 51 fatalities. Over the last 3 years, we never registered any disaster. Our definition of a disaster is when one accident actually kills 5 or more people. So over the last 4 years, we have not had a disaster in the mining industry. And therefore, the improvement is worth acknowledging, but every life lost is one life and be themselves. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much, Minister. We'll now proceed to Honorable Singh.
Speaker, Honorable President, honorable members. Let me start off by apologizing on behalf of Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, honorable member, who says while he cannot physically be in Cape Town, he knows that his contribution to this debate, read by the IFP's chief whip, will nevertheless express the voice of South Africans from all corners of our country. He says, when he was a student at the University of Fort Hare, the president of the Student Representative Council, Mr. Robert Mangaliswe Sobukwe, delivered a speech that he has never forgotten, and I quote, Mr. Sobukwe quoted the abolitionist William Lloyd Garrison, who declared the urgency of universal emancipation. He said, and I quote, I am aware that many object to the severity of my language, but tell him to moderately rescue his wife from the hands of the ravisher. Tell the mother to gradually extricate her babe from the fire into which it has fallen. But urge me not to use moderation in a cause like the present. I will not equivocate, I will not excuse, close quotes. Honorable President, after a man has lost his house, there is no glory in arriving a victim of gender-based violence that, quote, we cannot undo the mistakes of the past, close quote. There is such a thing as too little, too late. Even if this government were to wake up now and do its job, there is no guarantee it will be enough to claw our country back from disaster. Just as the calamity of our past demanded a severe, unequivocal, and urgent government that has made promises, reneged on promises, made plans, gone back on plans, changed direction, moved backwards, and stood still, all while our country is burning. Honorable Chairperson, in paying tribute to the Honorable Dr. Frini Jenwala last week, we remembered the first years of our democratic parliament and the Constitutional Assembly, in which we're becoming exasperated with your own party and telling them, and I quote what you said, Honorable President, at least the IFP knows what it wants, close quote. Right at the foundations of our democracy, the IFP produced a detailed analysis of what was needed, evaluating all the alternatives, pointing to the right path, and explaining why it was the best course of action. Had our government been as single-minded, committed, and competent as South Africa is defined by hope and resilience. But if you ask anyone on the street what defines us, they would say load shedding. There is a warning in that. How long will it be before you have a revolution on your hands? We were all disgusted by the disturbances on Thursday night during Sona. And as we walked out and as we met people on the street, they refer to this institution, this parliament, your parliament, Madam Speaker and Honourable Chairperson, as a circus ground. And this doesn't bode well for us as an institution. Just last week, the threats and insults and disruptive behavior evolved into falsely implicating the Minister of Police, and a thing must be done about that. Honourable Chairperson, when it comes down to it, what South Africans want is solutions. We want honesty, we want fairness and justice, and to know that our government is capable and willing to do its job. It is thus worrying to hear you say, Honourable President, that you have discovered a lack of technical skills and management skills across government. You now talk about rebuilding skills that have been lost over time. This did not happen by chance. Skills were pushed out in favor of giving jobs to pals. Can we really believe, Honourable Chairperson, that that gravy train will stop? Corruption has become so embedded in the culture of the civil service that it will take much more than words to change it. We have had to spend over R1 billion national state of disaster. We are not talking about one or two bad apples. There is a pervasive rot that needs to be dealt with, Honourable President. This is why our citizens no longer hear the echoes of Nelson Mandela when you say, let us work together. These words have become meaningless. There are communities that have given up on government ever coming to do the work and are doing it themselves. They even they are told that the pump is missing screws or the water tank has broken down or some other excuse why government cannot join this effort to work together. The appointing of a Minister of Electricity in the presidency is another way of saying that our Minister of Public Enterprises and our Minister of Minerals and Energy have failed. This bloating of bureaucracy is not a solution. As the IFP's president so aptly asked, inequality. Mr. President, what we need is people with the requisite skills, unbeholden to political masters, who reap no side benefits and who genuinely seek what is best for South Africa. In the absence of this, and in the absence of clear-cut strategies, with firm timelines and deliverables for investors, business and consumers, our fragile economy may well break. We do have experts, Honourable President. A man last week who qualified at UKZN, went abroad to Cambridge, did masters, did a PhD, expert on electricity issues, wants to come back and help the country, wrote to somebody in the department, no response. Honourable President, we also need to look ahead and train the next generation of skilled experts. You will remember that during our liberation struggle, when all across South African schools were being burned down and classrooms abandoned under the banner heavily in quality of education for the oppressed, providing the tools to shape the future and preparing the next generation to competently engage with a changed world. There is something very wrong, Mr. Chairperson, when we talk about an 80% metric pass rate, when at the same time, 80% of grade 4 learners are unable to read for meaning. What happened in between was not a miraculous intervention, but an excessively high rate of dropouts. And what happened? Yes, Honourable President, the main issue is electricity. But just because that is the crisis of today does not mean that every other crisis can be placed on hold. There are communities that have not had water for months and even years. There are people losing their homes and businesses to our struggling economy. There are, as you say, people who call 10111 when their lives are in imminent stimulus vouchers to subsistence farmers because of poor implementation. The figure has decreased to 140,000, yet government promises to provide 250,000 more this year. It is very difficult to believe the new promises being made when old promises remain unfulfilled. Honorable President, in his first State of the Nation address to a democratic South Africa of creating a people-centered society, to the pursuit of the goals of freedom from want, freedom from hunger, freedom from deprivation, freedom from ignorance, freedom from suppression, and freedom from fear, close quotes. Almost 3 decades later, that vision has disappeared. If the promise of South Africa is truly alive, it is thanks to the resilience of our people. But how far is this government willing to test our resilience? We are playing a dangerous game if we do not address the concern.
Honorable P.J. Groenewald.
Geachte Voorzitter, through you to the Honorable President. Honorable President, in your January address, you and the ANC thought it well to play the race card. What you didn't, and you said that you condemn racism. I predict that in the coming election, the race card is going to be played a couple of times. And Honorable President, you condemned racism, but the court case hasn't been finalized yet on that matter. Now, I want to put it very clearly. The Freedom Front Plus in the condemnation of racism between the ANC and the Freedom Front Plus. Honorable President, you only see racism as white on black racism. There was a court case about 2 black policemen, and the court found that a white woman, a colonel, was the victim of racism. Honorable President, that there's no place for racists in South Africa. They must leave the country. Honorable President, I request you, please ask these 2 black men who are racist to leave the country. Ons kan nie 'n nasie bou as ons eensaidig net deur 'n eenoogige perspektief te kyk na rasisme. U taak in terme van nasie. U sal dit net kan doen as u ook swart op wit rasisme kan veroordeel.
Honorable Groenewald, just a minute. I see there's a hand at the back there. On what point are you rising, member?
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I was just saying we don't have the headphones for interpretation. Okay. So Honorable Groenewald, when he goes deep, we can...
Please look at the situation, the interpretation. Please proceed, Honorable Groenewald. Honorable Groenewald, please proceed whilst we're sorting out the interpretation. Yeah, please.
The member can come, I'll explain to him afterward. Agbare President, wat ons sê is, dat ons kan nie dubbele standaarde handhaaf in Suid-Afrika nie. Die voorbeeld stel in terme van artikel 83C van die grondwet om nasie te bou. En ons moenie die rassekaart wil speel nie. Honorable President, as far as Eskom is concerned, I first want to ask you, you're going to appoint a minister for electricity. How many caterers do you need to change the bulb? One to hold the ladder, one to get on the ladder, one to pass on the bulb, and if they put it, it's only going to be a project manager. Those words should say something to you, because that minister doesn't see the new minister as that black economic empowerment and affirmative action is one of the main reasons determines that in the next 3 years, Eskom must get rid of 500 white men technicians with technical skills. Honorable President, I've urged you many times from this podium, let us get rid of black economic empowerment and affirmative action, because it's nothing else than the smokescreen for corruption. I said it many times, wants to build South Africa. Honorable Honorable President, are you aware of the fact that a Mr. Japie van Zyl, he studied at Stellenbosch. He was a member of the South African Navy. He's an engineer. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2020. But Japie van Zyl was the project manager. There is a mountain range named Japie van Zyl. That's acknowledgement for people from South Africa, irrespective of race. Honorable Chairperson, you said that we must take joint responsibility for Eskom. I want to put it very clearly. The Freedom Front Plus doesn't take responsibility for the crisis of Eskom. Yes, we have solutions, but the question is whether you're going to read it. Do you listen what opposition party leaders say to you? I don't experience that, unfortunately. So we do not take responsibility for the crisis. I also want to say, Honorable President, that you were put in charge in 2015 of the war room that was created by your predecessor. You yourself said the following: in the next 18 months to 2 years, you will forget that the challenges we had with power, energy, and Eskom ever existed. Close quote. On the 3rd of April 2019, the Honourable Minister Pravin Gordhan said the following: Eskom aims to ensure that there will be no more load shedding from 3 April 2019. With the University of Johannesburg, he said, we are now in the mood to urgently solve the crisis as soon as possible. Close quote. In the mood? Honourable Chairperson, maybe the Honourable Minister must visit the people on the streets and determine their mood when there is load shedding. And I can assure you, he will be surprised. I think it is arrogant to say we are now in the mood. So for solving the problem depends on the mood. Honourable President, I want to continue. There are simple steps that can be taken. For instance, Eskom applied for a permit to get an ongoing case between Eskom and the revenue services in terms of a rebate on fuel. Why don't you solve it? Why don't you, because we had our own survey amongst people, how they experience load shedding. And in our survey, we found that Mr. Maria Libbe is the owner of a small fuel station in Tromsburg in Kopanong in the Free State. His overheads increased with almost 40,000 rand during January this year, the existence of that business and the livelihoods of his staff members. Businesses in agriculture value chain in Frankfurt, Mafube, in the Free State, are spending as much as 22,000 rand per day on fuel for generation. Rand moes bestee aan alternatiewe energiebronne om sy vervoeronderneming. President, with my time, I want to say, crime in South Africa is out of control. When you became the president, you wanted to be Madiba too. Let me say this to you, take a leaf from the book of Madiba, because Madiba appointed a person come up with the idea of the scorpions. It's time we go back to that, to solve specifically transnational crime, and where kidnapping is a lucrative crime of today. Honourable President, the problem, and there are many problems, is the expropriation bill. The expropriation bill is nothing else than expropriation without compensation. I request you, before you, people who created a crisis cannot be the people to solve that crisis. There is only one way to solve all the crises in South Africa, And that is in next year's election, we must get rid of the ANC government. I thank you.
Thank you very much. We now proceed to the Minister of Police.
The Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Speaker, His Excellency the President, Deputy President, colleagues, the ministers, deputy ministers, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, Sanbonani Tumelan. Wednesday, before the SONA, a very long meeting with him. He was there to urge me and beg me to confirm that I have said IFP will kill him. And when I refused, he promised me that life is going to be difficult for me. Yes, Deputy, but not with me. It's not me who lied to you, to put you to come on the national TV to tell the world the wrong thing. It wasn't me. You go and correct it with your SG. I spent 47 minutes with him, and then I refused. Mr. President, that's the only reason. Maybe there are 3 more other reasons.
Minister, just a minute. Minister, just a minute.
No, thank you very much, Speaker. Let me address this coward of the ANC. So, the question that he should be responding to, did he not call me on Saturday? Last week, Saturday, he called me, he's the one who called me, not the other way around. And his call was very clear. SG, I've detected political intolerance in KZN that is going to lead to. He proposed that let us meet in Cape Town on Wednesday.
Honorable
so
member.
if he's scared of IFP, he must not use my name. He is a coward, he's scared of IFP.
Honorable member.
Not the other way around.
Honorable member, that's not the point of
It's
order.
a point of order. I'm addressing the coward.
Please.
I'm not scared of him or anyone
Please
else.
take your seat.
So if he's scared of IFP, that's his problem.
Please take your seat.
Yeah, if he's scared of IFP, he must not bring the beat to that.
Well, I didn't have the drink and juice to give it to you, but the meeting was quite long, 47 minutes. I'm sorry that you didn't give it anything to drink. Having said so, the second point on this one, I will request the president of the EFF to the debate here. You can bring it to the debate here. Thirdly,
a minute again. That's a minute. Yeah. Honorable Malema, on what point I rise?
Been an opportunity to speak to because you said I must withdraw. This is an abuse of this house. But unlike him, I've said this in public and I will say it again. I'm not scared of that. I brought it to his attention when the crime intelligence went to implicate Floyd in Hillary's murder. I told him that they said the crime intelligence is saying the suspect on the possible assassination of Floyd. He knows that, and I will repeat it in public.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, order, honorable members. Order, honorable members. Please take your seats.
Thank you very much.
Please. Honorable Minister, just a minute.
Honorable Malema.
Honorable, the rules. Please sit down, honorable member. Please sit down. Please sit down. No member can take the floor and speak unless a presiding officer says so. So please sit down. Honorable member, please take your seat. Honorable members, can I once again make this plea? Let us please stop from using point of orders to make, stop using point of orders to make speeches. Minister, please proceed.
Thank you very much. The third point on this one, I will never allow the South African police. That will take care of it and will make sure that you stay far. We don't come to run that organization. Third point, there is one thing common about you and me. So Babil Sakultu. But my grandma told me one thing, that when a pig takes your banana and runs to the pigsty, don't follow it. Allow the pig to swim alone. In that meeting this morning, on behalf of the selfless men and women in blue, who are the cold face of responding to gruesome crime scenes on the daily basis. By the way, the president of the FF is the only person that has called the police to be attacked in their houses. Made a call that attack their wives, attack their children, maybe that's why police are dedicated detectives who continue to solve complicated cases and further secure significant life sentences in the violent crime. And in the name of the fallen heroes who are killed in the line of duty while serving and protecting fellow South Africans. Honorable members, I wish to anchor this debate on the wise words of late civil rights activist John Lewis. During a trying time, responsibility and power, when he said, I quote, "When you see something that is not right, not fair, not just, we have to speak up. We have to say something, we have to do something," close quotes. Allow me to use these words to emphasize the importance of the community-centered approach in the overall and overarching and overarching families and communities can eventually realize the vision of halving violent crime in our country in the prescribed time. Up and do something, then the results will show. We are also making, and the organized groupings, don't be spectators, join the fight against crime. I will have to remind that today is the 10th year since the murder of young girl that was killed. Not die alone. There are others that are still dying today. The name is Rina Steenkamp. That's Rina Steenkamp, who was killed. And there are other young ladies that are still killed today. Karabo Mkwena, Jennifer Mhlumbi, Tsagofelo Pule, Ntokozo Kaba, and Nostelo Mtembe, especially two DA women. That as we see these problems of gender-based violence, they could not have allowed their leader to say the statement that she said about his ex-wife. Yes, he called her a flat chicken. He called her a roadkill. A roadkill is an animal. A roadkill is an animal that you kill and you do anything. It's a serious indictment. So I'm making a clarion call to speak to your leader, to say he cannot be ready to lead this country when he still looks at women as a roadkill, when he calls women as flat chickens. So I'm making that clarion call. So we have responded. We thank the President very much, giving us 10,000 members of the South African police that we trained last year, and we are also training 10,000 this year. And that will help to the visibility of police, but also it will help us to give us a pool to train the special units to be able to respond to the crime and different kinds of crime that are happening in South Africa. In the infrastructure mafia, including those that we have arrested, come as the problem of escort. We are continuing to pull those things together. Last year alone, we have arrested 4,909 people that have committed gender-based violence, almost 200 of them in the last 12 months alone, to deal with the issue of illegal firearms. It is on that score that at least 65,952 firearms illegal have been destroyed in the previous year. We will continue to hunt these guns. We will continue to strengthen the law that people must be safe when we collect these illegal firearms. But to South Africa, it goes to the Honorable Mr. Steenhuisen to say, Mr. Steenhuisen, we want to hear you apologizing to abuse a young woman who came to work in your office and was a wife of your colleague, and you took that wife of your colleague, you divorced your own wife, and you took that young girl. She is your wife today, but the women around you are quite sad.
Minister,
if not, we'll help you. Thank you very much, everybody.
Minister, please take your seat. Yeah, Honorable Mente, I'm recognizing Honorable Mente. As if Honorable Malima
Thank you, Chair.
wants to speak, yeah.
Where the minister drags a wife of the leader of the opposition and she's not here. Now you can do the nonsense you are doing, because when we're starting to respond, we're going to be in the wrong. We shouldn't, allegations that cannot be confirmed are being said here, and you allow that to happen. That degeneration, Honorable Chair, happened previously, and when we responded, you were the complainants. We cannot sit here and allow the minister to abuse the wife of the leader of the opposition in the name of fighting GBV. That is a woman abuse, what he did here, and cannot be accepted. He must be called to order and to withdraw that.
Honorable members, I have warned you continuously and have called on you not to raise allegations and matters that will require. I've asked you over and over again. But more importantly, I've warned you against the use of offensive language. So I'm pleading with you. That if we want this house to manage a way that ensures that the decorum of the house is maintained, all of us must cooperate. The issue that has been raised by the minister will be pursued. For now, we will proceed and have the Honorable Western Cape Premier.
This August House Mr. President, Leader of the Opposition, honorable members of this National Assembly, it is actually a privilege to be able to be part of this debate, but I must say that this debate on the state of our nation is at a critical time. Our nation is actually in a disaster. Not only a declaration of disaster, I'm only going to focus on two things in this debate. I want to focus on the energy crisis. And I'm going to start off by, Honourable Minister and the Presidency, putting some numbers on the table, some facts. You called for the facts. It has been over 5,500 days since South Africa, since the then Deputy President, the now President Cyril Ramaphosa, was made responsible for the Eskom war room. Nearly 3,000 days, remember that number. It has been over 200 days since the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, addressed the nation with his crisis interventions after more than 200 days ago. We have had 167 days of power cuts since September 2022, only 2 days without rolling blackouts across our country. As the Leader of the Opposition says, more than 1,000 hours of load shedding in our country. And our response, we already have 3 ministers who are responsible of a new Minister of Energy. And then we declare a disaster, which brings another minister in play. So now we have 4 ministers responsible for fixing this problem, and we put another minister. I say to this House that this is an imperial presidency. This is political rhetoric. It is about lavish spending, no detail, and contradictory information on sorting out this absolutely on real detail of where we are with this disaster. I have attended many meetings, and I will tell you about that clarity, because the same minister says we want the facts. I'll tell you one fact. Since the then President called that disaster committee over 200 days ago, we have not seen actually been less megawatts in our system since that meeting was called on the 25th of July, 2022. And when I say we need clarity, I've actually written to the President, because the clarity is so glaringly missing. If you go to the PCC and you see what is said there, where they say up to 8,822 megawatts will be brought, start interrogating the 2023 8,822 megawatts. The first thing that comes into that mix is 1,621 megawatts from our neighboring countries. Don't we sell power to our neighboring countries? Not 1,625, but it's maybe 300. Let's talk about the Kusile component of that 8,800 megawatts. That's 2,880 megawatts. The 2,880 megawatts comes from Unit 1, 2. When it comes on, it's got to be trialed first. So that's not this year, that's next year. We also know that Unit 1, 2, and 3, and I didn't get this from my letter to the President, of which the one is totally collapsed, are filled with, to solve that problem is at least, from the professionals, 10 months. At least, that takes us to the end of the year. How on earth are we going to get those 3 units back in? So every single detail that's been put on the table is relevant. I also want to say that the urgency that we're hearing now is way too late. Way, way too late. Can I also say to you that now 5 days after the SONA and declaring a disaster to sort out this emergency of power production in our country, if we don't get the regulations right, the whole thing will fail. But I can also say to you that this province will play its part. We've already started putting forward our comments on the regulations. I also want to say one other thing that was said from this podium today about we are going to take that debt and remove it from Eskom, so-called write it off. And what will we do? We'll add that debt back on to the debt carried by the citizens and the taxpayers of this country. So those that are paying their electricity are now going to have to pay the debt of everyone else who hasn't. Where is the urgency, I ask, to the government of this country? You know that on the 24th of February last year, almost a year ago, there was some colonization taking place in the Northern Hemisphere. As a consequence of that illegal war, the consequence was an energy crisis in another part of the world, in Europe, because Russia provides gas to much of Europe. Europe knew that there was an energy crisis on the way. So 200 days after the president, 17% of their energy production is going to be at risk because they were not going to get Russian gas. They built a brand new gasification system. That took 192 days, done and dusted, ready to operate. 192 days, less time than it took between the same risk in energy, and they took 160 days to create their own gasification import systems so that they could mitigate their energy risks going into their winter. 160 days. And we are sitting at 200 days and not even 1 megawatt. And I haven't even spoken about safety or murder. Do you know, Chair, that wasn't mentioned by the President? The 18.7% increase in murder in the Eastern Cape of 4,407 people last year, the 5,000
time is up,
and the 4,109 people murdered in this province. That minister never said a word about it, and neither did that president, and that minister must go. So must this ANC government.
Our chairperson, Honorable President, Deputy President, Honorable Speaker, and honorable members. Mr. President, the UDM believes that the people you should have relied on to implement your plan, in particular accounting officers, have been sidelined for years, and those responsible for oversight have overstepped their boundaries for far too long. This makes government ineffective. With the UDM issue one in 1970 and to 80s. These people made a considerably, that is now managed by the PIC. Their concerns center around the calculation of their pensions, which had an effective date starting in 1996. They feel that there is a major error in how their pensions are being calculated. They have raised to no avail, and there is much unhappiness regarding this issue. As a result, they find themselves in court with their limited resources. The UDM would suggest that government must appoint a team of experts to clear out this crisis, and that they work with pensioners' organizations who represented this group. Some people have, in the meantime, and for all. The other one is the issue of military veterans, Mr. President. The military veterans' pensions, regulations, and benefits, as recently proposed by the Minister of Defense, has also been a bone of contention. Through these regulations, ex-MK and by extension rather, ex-APLA veterans are being elevated above their military level. We must remind ourselves that there was no outright winner between black and white, militarily speaking, in the armed struggle. We agreed to all to sit down around the table and broker peace. So no one can claim the right to dictate the rules and regulations against others. To the act and the spirit of the integration or integrated armed forces. This behavior will affect the morale of the serving men and women and those who are retired. It is a fact that we must thank the opposition parties in this country for playing a meaningful role in affecting change in South Africa. The ruling party outright rejected former public protector's Thuli Madonsela's state capture findings, which showed in no uncertain terms how state resources have been misused. For example, the country has been delivered into the grips of load shedding, whilst corruption has chewed all the money that was meant to develop the power generating infrastructure of South Africa. Certainly, Mr. President, the ruling party on this one had benefited through Hitachi and Chancellor House deals. The ruling party is accused, number one. Lastly, the Zondo Commission's report has been generating dust here in Parliament. We would prefer that the leader of government business in Parliament must monitor the process and the implementation of the Zondo Commission's findings. He should also advise as to how the other serious evidence slipped through the Commission's processes and how for the current Speaker to drive the debate as she is conflicted. The Bosasa offshoot company, Jambu Holdings, which she was part of, received millions and millions of rands in tenders from the state. Bosasa, as we all know, was cited in the commission. So, akangayikhophela le AYA party yayo uqala kweBosasa azokunika direction ba masiyixoxe kanjani. Asizum
Honourable members, last year the National Assembly had the chance to amend the Disaster Management Act to prevent the further abuse of government power under a national state of disaster. At the time, the government's monumental mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic was still fresh in the mind of evidence at the time. Talk about not leaving anybody behind. Millions of South Africans were left behind and are still behind because of serious constitutional defects, making it a dangerous weapon in the hands of incompetent ministers, power to invoke a national state of disaster. And this gives that minister, presently the Honourable Dlamini Zuma, extraordinary powers to make and break laws. There's no requirement that a declaration of this nature should be tabled or debated in Parliament. Parliament cannot amend regulations issued under a national state of disaster or veto them. And this decree of a national state of disaster can be rolled over a perpetual national state of disaster. This is why the DA is challenging Section 27 of the Disaster Management Act. But had the ANC and the majority in Parliament not blocked that amendment to the Disaster Management Act last year, Parliament could have solved the problem by its own initiative. At the time, the DA sounded the following warning, that the government's handling of COVID-19 was... So here we are again. In the ordinary sense of the word, the electricity crisis in South Africa and our reliance on Eskom is a disaster. It is an ANC-sponsored disaster. The cumulative effect of decades of cadre deployment, state capture, race-based recruitment and procurement, and a stubborn ideological refusal to let go of the state's energy monopoly. But let's not be under any illusion. If what the president has in mind is a COVID-19-like response to this, we can only prepare for a worse disaster. We can only prepare for a worse disaster. As for removing the blockages that do exist in the way of cost-effective and quick decisions being made at Eskom, as well as the eventual reform of the electricity sector, the President does not require a national state of disaster. And there is still no separate entity and board for electricity transmission. No progress made on upgrading the grid, without which we cannot uptake the privately generated wind and solar that we so desperately need. The President's own erstwhile advisor, Anton Eberhard, says that it is Minister Pravin Gordhan, the Minister of Public Enterprises, that is blocking the unbundling of Eskom. Actively combined cycle gas plant that had to be built in Richards Bay, which Eskom applied to the Minister of Energy, the Honourable Mantashe. That application was made in January last year. It took the minister 5 months to reply, only to tell them he wants further information. He then forwards the application to NERSA. It takes NERSA another 6 months, bureaucratic, what would you call it? Bureaucratic bungling, ministerial incompetence. The country's energy generating capacity deteriorated to the point of stage 7 and 8 load shedding. Dink aan die 150 miljoen liter diesel wat Eskom elke maand moet brand. En natuurlik verwelkom die DA die president se versekering dat daar genoeg geld sal wees vir diesel. Maar dieselfde minister was blykbaar omdat hulle een of ander bergingsregulasie nie aan voldoen nie. As hierdie lisensie toegestaan word, as Eskom diesel teen grootmaatpryse kan aankoop, kan dit R6 per liter spaar, 'n besparing van biljoene vir die Suid-Afrikaanse belastingbetalers. Replacing Minister Gordhan and Mantashe, the Tweedledee and Tweedledum of the electricity. And while we're on Minister Mantashe, you should really not attack the EFF from this podium, because he is in coalition with the EFF in Johannesburg. That's how these things work. But even discounting ministerial incompetence, Mr. Chairperson, even discounting that, there are regulations that stand in the way of quick and effective decisions being made to stabilize Eskom. And ministerial determinations does not require a national measures to Parliament, narrowly focused on solving Eskom's problems, including exemptions to preferential procurement, BEE, diesel storage requirements, the BEE Act at the Preferential Procurement Policy Framework Act. Current ministers can allow Eskom exemptions from this legislation. This is the kind of ring-fenced disaster response that the DA envisages and which the President can still take up if he really wants to solve this crisis. But in the meantime, Chairperson, we have no other option as the Democratic Alliance but to... I thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll proceed to the Minister of Trade, Competition and Industry.
NCOP Chairperson, Mr. President, honorable members, fellow South Africans. While our debate today rightly focuses on local challenges, the world within which we navigate our economic prosperity is changing rapidly, reshaping the global economy. They will impact on our lives. The State of the Nation address sets out a number of steps that this government is taking so that South Africa can respond to these. These megatrends include, first, the impact of climate change on societies and economies that limits carbon-intensive growth, but also brings opportunities with green industrialization. Second, the new geopolitics of a sharply polarizing world, which will shape decisions, change the skills we need, the jobs that will decline, and the jobs that will grow. These developments occurred simultaneously with the most severe disruptions in supply chains in decades, impacting on factories in South Africa and elsewhere. They highlight the importance of what President Ramaphosa referred to on Thursday night as resilience. In their eagerness to point score an election year, the opposition speakers this morning Africa's resilience. 6 of these measures are addressing the pressing challenges of energy, building a larger African market for our goods and services, boosting investment in the economy, developing sector compacts around local production, broadening ownership and economic inclusion, and promoting local innovation. While the DA was flip-flopping on its own call for a national state of disaster, and the EFF indulged in disruptive tactics on supply, energy shortages are damaging the economy, requiring a focus on fixing coal power stations and expanding renewable energy. In a recent visit to Saudi Arabia, the President addressed companies to invest in our energy sector. One such firm, Aqua Power, is building a large solar plant in Postmasburg in the Northern Cape, a town with evidence of a history of innovation stretching back to the Khoisan people who mine for release when there's no sunlight. With 100 megawatts of energy, it expects to cover up to 200,000 households from this one plant. Air Liquide will this year start building a 220 megawatt solar plant in Humansdorp, while, as Minister Mantashe says, several other energy plants are currently being built. To speed up energy supply, a number of government departments like the DTIC have lifted red tape and provided more flexibility to the build program. The Competition Act within 4 weeks, and the Competition Tribunal will consider new measures to speed up hearings on competition cases relating to energy. To provide for a just transition, we're mobilizing support for workers to be retrained, for renewable energy components to be made locally, and for a special focus on Mpumalanga. Incidentally, the DA speaks about crossing the Rubicon, Honorable Steenhuisen. History records when he started the civil war and he became a dictator for life. Be careful what you wish for. And the DA itself crossing the Rubicon, oh boy, given your policies, it's about crossing the river while abandoning the poor, discarding the elderly, and sacrificing the lowest paid in society. In Cape Town, living in misery will confirm that. Only a small minority, Italy. This government is working with 53 other African countries across the Limpopo to bring into operation a vast new African continental free trade area. Our exports to the rest of the world is growing after the disruptions of COVID. SARS reports that global exports have now exporting nearly R500 billion in goods to other African countries, our highest level ever. What's more, nearly 3/4 of this are exports of manufactured goods, value-added exports which create jobs. We've reached record levels of exports of products to other African countries last year, ranging from cosmetics to trucks. But we can do more. The AFC FTA, the President noted that South Africa and 4 neighbors will shortly be submitting a joint offer on products where import tariffs will be reduced for the AFC FTA. 2 days later, on Saturday, we tabled that offer at a meeting of the AFC FTA trade ministers in Gaborone. These are important steps in driving the development of our continent. A stronger Africa is a stronger South Africa. While the EFF mobilizes on the streets with fake militaristic rhetoric and invests more than R1 trillion in the economy, members of parliament may wonder, how will that pledges be realized? Let me give a few examples to illustrate the impact on production, on jobs. This pulp that goes into the making of viscose fabrics, tablets, and other products. Young fashion designer Tsepo Mohlala uses a rayon from the pulp for October to open an undersea cable between South Africa, West Africa, and Europe, significantly expanding our ability to do business, to run Zoom meetings, and complete cross-border financial transactions. Example 3, the recently opened Hesto harness plant employs 4,000 workers in Kwadukuza. Nokwazi Mbele is an electrical engineer, one of a number of women creating jobs through localizing people, Honorable Malema, unlike what you assert. Had time permitted, I would have provided details of many other projects, like the opening of the new Corobrik brick factory in Carltonville, or the Polarium plant. IC incentives. All of these, the product of this government, working together with business, brings jobs to divide the nation. This government is building greater cohesion between South Africans in the economy. through social compacts or master plans in steel, in carpet plans require something from everyone. The sugar master plan is stabilizing a still troubled industry and saving jobs. The clothing master plan is shifting the sourcing decisions of major retailers. The global business services master plan is creating jobs. The auto master plan is re-industrializing the economy. Ask Honorable Steenhuisen. He will know that in Gauteng, 10 newly built factories opened in the Tshwane Auto Special Economic Zone last year, and its suppliers. And the new vehicle will be exported to more than 100 countries across the world. In the Eastern Cape, the new Isuzu G-Max began rolling off the production line in Gqeberha in April. We'll build on all of this with a shift to hybrid and electric vehicles, including pursuing our interest in deepening the value chain in electric vehicle components, including battery production. While the DA is engaging to widen the base for economic activity, promoting worker ownership in the economy, promoting black industrialists. Today, the Commission gazetted the new market inquiry on fresh food produce markets. It's about opening that up for new entrants. In the next 3 months, the Commission will conclude its market inquiry into online and digital services such as property, food ordering, accommodation, and general e-commerce service last year. They include black industrialists like Dalisu, who began commercial production, manufactures industrial valves and pumps, or Cape Bio that makes enzymes used in molecular biology research and diagnostics, or Microfinish that manufactures safety components for Intac-owned firm Black Excellence, driving industrialization in our economy. The past year saw greater levels of worker ownership in the economy. More than 400,000 workers own shares in firms they work for, including Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, ShopRite, Imperial, Consul Grass, Burger King, many mining companies and elsewhere. Not politically connected people, Honorable Steenhuisen, but workers like Makoko, real benefits to South Africans. In some cases, nominated representatives sit on the boards of those companies, bringing the voice of workers into corporate thinking, and at the same time, giving workers an insight into the strategic thinking and challenges faced by companies. And while the DA and the EFF have shown in the SONA debate an absence of ideas and ability only to publish the green hydrogen commercialization strategy for public comment. And this is about seeking to use South African sunlight, wind and minerals to position us as a leader in the production of this exciting clean energy. Honorable members, the year ahead is still tough, with strong headwinds and energy shortages that will still limit our growth. We're working on it. And the country faces many challenges. But in these, join us, let's roll up our sleeves and be part of the national effort to build the economy and build our nation's hope and resilience. I thank you.
Break for lunch, but please note the following. And for those members who may wish to go back to Parliament, Mark's Building restaurant is open. We'll reconvene at 14:15. Thank you very much. Yeah, proceedings are now suspended.